Welcome to In Pursuit of Truth. This is your host, Sir Patrick Maximus. Ladies and gentlemen, the clock is ticking. When will the first alarm ring?
Oh my goodness, it's time to wake up, you sleepy person.
Yeah, knucklehead, wake up. It's time to do some Q posts. John, how many we got?
4.
Yes, sir. Let's get started. 26, 11 minutes after the hour of 6 p.m. We get this NBC link. Q says the clock is ticking. When will the first alarm ring? And it takes you over here to NBC, quote-unquote, news. Flynn hearing leaves the far right's conspiracy theorists wanting. All right, well, to be fair, ladies and gentlemen, before I begin any of this article, let me just point out that it's written by one Ben Collins. Okay, well, to be fair, I've got to announce my bias against Ben Collins. We don't exactly have the best working relationship, if you will, but we're going to go ahead and press on through this article anyway. Just thought it was fair to announce that I got a little bit of a bias against Ben. Wuss. A year-old conspiracy theory simmering in both far-right message boards and mainstream conservative publications that predicted former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn would be exonerated fell apart on Tuesday at his sentencing hearing, leaving believers perplexed. The rumors, which were pushed heavily by believers in the QAnon conspiracy theory in recent days, predicted that Judge Emmett Sullivan would throw out Flynn's guilty plea and reprimand special counsel Robert Mueller's team for nefarious investigating practices. In reality, Sullivan excoriated Flynn, saying that arguably you sold your country out by working as an unregistered foreign agent to Turkey while advising President Donald Trump during his candidacy, and clarifying with Flynn that he did not wish to challenge the circumstances under which he was interviewed by the FBI. Flynn's defense attorney suggested last week that he had somehow been entrapped into lying to the FBI. I was aware that lying to the FBI was a crime, Flynn told Sullivan, adding that he accepted responsibility for his false statements. Though Sullivan delayed sentencing Flynn for 3 months, noting that Flynn could cooperate further with Mueller's team, he made it clear that a jail term for Flynn remains a possibility. As Mueller's investigation has widened and ensnared more members of Trump's team, conspiracy theories of Trump loyalists have been forced into a variety of contortions to justify the belief that the special prosecutor's actions are working in Trump's favor or an abuse of prosecutorial power. Many of those contortions relied on Flynn being let off by Sullivan, who on Tuesday made clear that would not be the case. The idea that Flynn holds a lot of secrets about the deep state and won't face serious consequences is important to the QAnon community, said Travis View, a conspiracy theory researcher. Wow, that sounds sciencey. They've been banking on Sullivan throwing out the charges. In the last week, conservative media had hailed Sullivan as a hero who was about to unmask the purported misdeeds of the Mueller investigation. The notion that Flynn could end up exonerated found its way to Representative Darrell Issa of California, who guessed on Fox News Sunday this week that Flynn's case would be thrown out of court. I would not be surprised a bit if the conviction of Flynn is overturned because of the Justice Department and FBI's misconduct, Issa said. The theory began back in February with a series of articles on conservative news websites lauding Sullivan as a government misconduct expert who may be looking to get Flynn to change his plea. Okay, well, once again, it looks to me like Ben Collins got it very, very wrong. All right, well, let's skip Ben Collins and get to some real news and actually look at the transcript here. This is a little bit blurry, but let me turn your attention here to line 11 in the center. As such, the court concludes that it must now first ask Mr. Flynn certain questions to ensure that he entered his guilty plea knowingly, voluntarily, intelligently, and with fulsome and satisfactory advice of counsel. So I want to make this really clear here. This Judge Emmett Sullivan was very, very clear, kind of basically, stating, are you sure you want to enter a guilty plea? And this is why it was so weird for him at line 15. I cannot recall any incident in which the court has ever accepted a plea of guilty from someone who maintained that he was not guilty, and I don't intend to start today. So I'm going to invite Mr. Flynn and his attorney or attorneys to come to the podium, and I'm going to ask the courtroom deputy to administer the oath to Mr. Flynn. Okay, well, while Ben Collins wants to announce that he was excoriating Mr. Flynn, and he did say a few things out of turn, the beginning kind of looked like a little bit of a dog and pony show to me, but this looked like it was all all for a certain reason. This Judge Emmett Sullivan was making it very clear how serious these charges were. And of course, I think there needed to be a little bit of a media show also. Now, here we see the court talking to Mr. Kellner and Mr. Van Grack, who are both the legal counsel for General Flynn. And on line 6 here, we see the judge talking about the excoriation. All right, I also asked about, and this is very important, I also asked about the special counsel's office. I also asked questions about the special counsel and and other potential offenses for the purpose of understanding the benefit, if any, that Mr. Flynn has received in the plea deal. I wasn't suggesting he committed treason. I wasn't suggesting he committed violations. I was just curious as to whether or not he could have been charged, and I gave a few examples. And you know, there are a lot of conspiracy theorists out there. I'm not taking the elements of any of the uncharged offenses into consideration at the time of sentencing. I was just trying to determine the benefit of and the generosity of the government in bestowing a benefit on Mr. Flynn. That was the reason why. And here he clarifies about his excoriation. All right, I just want to ask a couple of questions. This is directed to either government counsel or defense counsel. I made a statement about Mr. Flynn acting as a foreign agent while serving in the White House. I may have misspoken. Does that need to be corrected? And Mr. Van Grack confirms. And he says, all right, that's what I thought, and I felt terrible about that. I just want the record to be clear on that. You agree with that, counsel? So there you go, Ben Collins. Now, thanks to Saint No More on Twitter, who turned me on to a Twitter thread from Greg Rubini, who made a great observation here in line 13, that word fulsome. It is kind of a curious word, right? As such, the court concludes that it must now first ask Mr. Flynn certain questions to ensure that he entered his guilty plea knowingly, voluntarily, intelligently, and with fulsome and satisfactory advice of counsel. Well, here's the definition from Merriam-Webster. Fulsome: characterized by abundance, generous in amount, extent, or spirit, being full and well developed, aesthetically, morally, or generally offensive, exceeding the bounds of good taste, excessively complimentary or flattering. Okay, well, these seem a little bit out of context, don't they, for what this judge is talking about? Well, I suppose you could argue that General Flynn has been very generous in amount of time and goodwill and extent of spirit. That's fulsome, right? Or is it referring to this from the GCHQ director, Robert Hannigan? This was a letter back on the November 17th, 2016. I know. Number 1, on 28th of August 2016, GCHQ filed for permission to execute Project Fulsome at the request of a U.S. president seeking intelligence gathering into the Trump Organization and Donald J. Trump for President Incorporated, both located at 725 Fifth Avenue, New York, USA. Activities include foreign and U.S. domestic signals collection in regards to communication with Russian hostile actors. 2, IOCCO approved Fulsome on 15th of September 2016, allowing 90 days of initial signal intelligence gathering with the potential for renewal should the situation allow. This memo's purpose is to request a 90-day renewal of Fulsome's original charter with further potential for renewal thereafter. Okay, so was this the Fulsome reference that we were making, or was it just an interesting choice of words for the judge? Greg Rubini seems to think there might be something to that, and I tend to agree. Okay, so they're kicking the can down the road on this thing a little bit longer. They're requesting that this go back until March, the sentencing, that is. I'm not so sure it'll go back that far or not, but this Judge Sullivan seemed to be giving the defense team every opportunity to change their plea, and of course they were doubling down. Mike Flynn basically saying, I don't want to be acquitted. Okay, well, if you don't want to be acquitted, what do you want to be? What do you know? He seems very confident that something is going to come out in the wash, right? And like I said, the judge seemed very keen on getting them to change their verdict. So what does that judge know that we don't know, right? Is this Fulsome reference a really legit reference? It very well could be. Does this judge know something? It would seem to me that it's possible. Now, he was appointed by Reagan back in 80. That would be 84. but has really worked with worked closely with both sides. You have Clinton and Republicans appointing him to different positions along his career. So it's really hard to know. It just seems like a judge to me. Now, he's made some key decisions as of recent, particularly this week, going after Trump's immigration policy in regards to previously gang-related crime convicted immigrants coming across the border wanting to, rejecting their asylum. And Judge Sullivan put the squash on that. But at the same time, this is the same judge that also has a rule for Tom Fitton in his request to give basically 30 days to Hillary Clinton to answer these 2 email questions. And we reported on this a couple weeks ago. So we'll have to see how that plays out too. So the plot thickens, and I'm incredibly intrigued. Q goes on to say, when will the first alarm ring? Well, I'm not really sure. Is it going to hit with this EO on January 1st? If the Senate was the primary target, majority control, then we have an ellipses here, and I want to talk about that in just a minute. 53 to 47 active win. Well, I guess that would be January 1st, right? And that's when the EO hits also. EO, designated targets, active win. So is that when that full fat Whopper with cheese drops? Do it! I don't know. Like I've always said before, I don't want to play with dates because it does feel like the goalposts get moved, but I want to make sure that I'm understanding this right. Now, this is strange because we have EO being an executive order, which is the January 1st, basically the amendments to, martial law and whatnot. Designated targets. So who are our designated targets? Where these are envelope receivers at the George Bush funeral. And let's remember, too, Mike Pence's wife got one of those bad boys. So if that is indeed something of note, we need to remember that she got one of those too. More on that some other time. But I just think that's important to throw that out there. And then we have this S and we got a little pew pew after that. I'm not really sure exactly what that means. But Q says active win, ongoing investigations. Then we get that ellipses again. Now, a lot of people have debated on these ellipses. I always tend to think that Q is talking about how do you legally inject evidence. Q has made this reference in previous Q posts before, and sometimes I tend to think that that's what Q is referring to. We'll even see it again here in a future post. But then we have this from Sarah Carter. There are a lot of sealed indictments. And then these other quotes here. It's all going to come out. Uranium One, dossier, Clinton Foundation, etc. And that's Sean Hannity. I have pretty good sources. Again, Sean Hannity. There is a reason why Sean Hannity, Sarah Carter, and John Solomon are on stage. And here is the Fox video from the 11th on Hannity that references these quotes.
And I think you all will confirm with me is that my sources tell me all of this is coming out. From the dossier to FISA abuse to the Uranium One deal. All agree?
Hope you're right.
I agree. Lots of sealed indictments, Sean. Lots of sealed indictments.
I have very good sources. I really do. And you guys do too. Great work, all three of you. Thank you.
Q adds on in post 2627, 14 minutes after the hour of 6 p.m. Why does the fake news media continually attack, as they say, so-called only a conspiracy? Nothing to see here. Lonely guy behind a keyboard movement. Hey, that's not nice. Sometimes I get out and pet the dogs and whatnot. Yeah, why does Ben Collins always go after QAnon? What's going on with that? Why is it so important if it's not a real big deal? If it doesn't mean anything, why are you going after it so hard? If it's such a small little issue, why is it so important to put it in all these major publications and tell everybody that it's not a big deal? The largest media companies in the world giving so much attention. Washington Post leading the attack? Of course they are. Remember, Washington Post is Bezos. Bezos is Amazon. Amazon is the very group that was handling all those cloud servers for the DNI and all the intelligence communities. So I suppose they would get a bead on how things were working out, right? Just in case anything ever needed to leak, or if you needed to get somebody out in front of the story. You know how it goes. All this intelligence leads to some pretty skewed news, and we'd sure hate for everybody to find that thing out, right? So when you circumvent that and you start going on 8chan and you start finding out some other things for yourself, or you just get somebody kind of directing you to some links that might tell you the whole story, all of a sudden that becomes a big, big threat. Why is that? Logical thinking always wins. Q. Let's move on to 2628. 19 minutes after the hour of 6 p.m. We get this YouTube link here, and it takes you to the video that is this speech will get President Donald Trump elected. We've seen it many, many times. If you've not watched it, please go check it out. I avoid playing it these times because we post it so many times and I tend to get hit for a lot of copyright, but it is always something very, very important to listen to. I usually, after I'm done making the video, sit back and pour a cup of coffee and listen to it to myself. So do what you got to do there. Q says this is not another 4-year election. Listen very carefully. Power returned to the people. Long-term solutions. Panic, panic, panic. Q. Let's move on to 2629. 23 minutes after the hour, 6 p.m. D-Day, Patriots.
I want a Whopper.
We will have our country back. Q+.
Mira, you gotta get up. Drop the pillow. Just do what I say and drop the pillow.
Okay, so a few things to chew on right here. Now, traditionally, Q has referred to the Democrats as D, right? And put them in brackets at times before. But it looks like these are kill brackets. Does that mean we are about to exercise an operation against these Democrats? Not really sure. Is D-Day a reference to when, of course, U.S. forces stormed the beaches in Normandy? Could be. Now, D-Day usually kind of references an operation, and I want to point this out to you. I've actually shown this to you before. This is from Army.mil, and I'll leave this down for you below. What does the D in D-Day mean? And of course, I'm going to put it on my Patreon also, but I just want to highlight the middle part right here. In other words, the D in D-Day merely stands for day. This coded designation was used for the day of an important invasion or military operation. For military planners and then later historians, the days before and after a D-Day were indicated using plus and minus signs. D-4 meaning 4 days before D-Day, while D+7 meant 7 days after a D-Day. All right, well, like I said, I'll leave that down below for you. Could D5 be in reference to a 5-day period, leading up to or post operation? Not really sure, but it looks like we're coming up on D-Day, Patriots. All right, kids, those are your Q posts. I'm keeping it short today because I am actually literally shutting down this computer and packing it up and moving for a few days. So you may or may not hear from me tomorrow, depending on how today goes. Those are your Q posts. As always, if you like this video, please click like, share, and subscribe. Thanks to all of you who are already doing that. If you're new to my channel, please keep in mind that from time to time you will be unclicked, unnotified, and unsubscribed. Just do me a favor and recheck yourself. That's just a little battle we have with social media. All my links are down below to my Gab, my Real.video, which is now Brighteon.com, and my BitChute. My email is down below, and my Patreon is down below too if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks to all of you for all you do. I will get packed up and hopefully get myself to another location and get back at you really soon. This is Sir Patrick Mack, and until next time, stay safe.